Best-selling authors almost never lose a reader at a chapter break. And right now, somewhere in your novel, there's one where your reader is going to stop. It's midnight and they've got work in the morning. How you wrote that chapter ending decides whether your book goes on the nightstand or they're already into the next chapter instead of going to sleep. And that's got almost nothing to do with how good that chapter was. When I was writing my own first draft, I was always second guessing where to end my chapters. Or I'd get a hunch and the hunch would be right, but I never knew why, which meant I couldn't repeat it across an entire manuscript. So I went and dissected some of the biggest best-selling novels out there, chapter by chapter, and the same two patterns kept showing up. In the last 12 months, I've helped 128 writers put these two patterns into their own novels. Learn them and you'll make yours a lot harder to put down without changing a single thing about the story. So in this video, I'll walk you through both using 3 chapters from one of these best-selling novels. Because get your chapter endings wrong and your readers won't just stop for tonight, they'll stop for good. Alright, so for this video, you're going to need 2 things. A tiny bit of context so that you can follow along without giving you any spoilers, and a quick refresher on the 6 building blocks that every scene runs on. Now, a quick disclaimer about the book we're using today. It is a bestseller, yes, but that doesn't make it perfect. There's a lot to be said about the pacing and about the prose, but it is a best-selling novel in a best-selling series, which means something in it is working. And if there's one thing this book does properly over and over again, it's chapter transitions. This book is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, and it is the 2nd installment in the series. And here's what you need to know. Violet is a 2nd-year student at a war college known to be a ruthless place where students who can't keep up die. She's training to be a dragon rider to defend the kingdom against its only enemy, Griffin riders. Except when Violet ventured past the borders, she worked out that Griffin riders are not the enemy at all. They're fighting something else, something far worse. Monsters that people in charge insist don't exist. And those same people seem to have destroyed any evidence. The question is, why? So in the chapters that we'll be looking at, she's back at school, acting normal, hiding what she knows from her closest friends because knowing could get them killed. There's a small group at school, however, who do know and who are part of an underground movement. They're not friends by any means, but right now, if she wants to get to the bottom of it, she has no choice but to trust them. Now, what makes these chapter breaks work has nothing to do with dragons or war colleges or who's lying to who, okay? It's structural, which means it will work exactly the same in your book. And it all comes down to 6 building blocks that every scene is made of. I call them the story pillars. And at this level of application, the scenes, these pillars are pretty straightforward. First, you have an inciting incident. For a scene, this could be an event or an encounter. And in this video, you'll see how both play out. Then you have the progressive complications, which raises the stake within the scene. Third, you have the turning point. This is usually the easiest to pin down in a scene, yet you're probably not using it right, and I'll get to that in a minute. Then you have the moment of crisis and contemplation, the climax, and finally the resolution of the scene. Don't worry about memorizing them for now. I've put together a free scene planner that I use with all the writers that I work with that also helps you decide where your chapters should actually break, and you can grab your copy using the link down below. Now, that planner only works if you know where a scene actually starts and stops. And that's the thing most writers get wrong, because a scene isn't a room. For a lot of writers, whatever happens in, let's say, the kitchen is scene 1, then if the characters walk outside, that's scene 2. New location, new scene kind of thing. But to master chapter breaks, you need to see a scene as one continuous camera movement. You follow your character until the screen goes black. They can walk out of a classroom, down a corridor, and into a library, and that would still be the same scene as long as the camera never cuts away. And in this video, we're going to go through 4 different scenes across 3 chapters. All right, now we're ready to dive in. The first way to get from one chapter into the next is to stop the scene dead in its tracks, but there's an art to it. So if you look at chapter 9, there are 3 scenes. In the first one, Violet is heading out for a run. In the second scene, she's in one of her classes called Battle Brief. And in the third and final scene, she is at the gym where first-year students are being assessed on their fighting and combat skills. Now let's have a deeper look at that chapter. In the first scene, the inciting incident is the encounter with another character, Imogen. It's what gets the scene in motion, but notice that it doesn't start with the inciting incident. That's because when the inciting incident of your scene is an inciting encounter, you need a little bit of setup first. You see here in the first few lines, we understand that it's the next morning. Violet wakes up in a cold sweat and she had a nightmare. She goes down the ground floor, does a little bit of stretching, and then comes Imogen. Has anyone told you that a perk of being a second year is the extra hour of sleep you get to have without chores? Imogen asks as she approaches. Then the first progressive complication has fairly low stakes. Imogen tells her, but what I can't figure out is why the hell you've been running every morning. And Violet freezes. She says, how would you know that I've been running every morning? Here, Violet isn't in danger. She's just realized somebody has been watching her and she doesn't know why. The stakes are low as it seems that Imogen only wants to know why she's running. To which she then responds, I'm good in short bursts, but anything longer than that and I won't make it. Then their conversation gets interrupted by the next progressive complication. Her friend Rhiannon arrives. Not sure I'm pronouncing those names correctly. But because Violet has been hiding things from her, it's their friendship that's at stake and slowly degrading. There are more progressive complications, but eventually the scene turns. Imogen gets in her way and blocks the exit. You said you won't make it. Imogen gets to the handle before I do and holds the door shut. When I ask you why you're running, what did you mean? Violet can't deflect this one. There's no route back to the way the scene was 30 seconds ago. And that's what makes it a turning point rather than another complication. Which leads us to the next story pillar, the moment of crisis and contemplation, where the character has to make a decision. Which then leads to the climax where Violet tells her the truth, the one that she's been running from the whole scene. That she's running because she watched her friend die against the real enemy. That her friend was on the ground without her dragon and she couldn't run fast enough to survive. And that if for whatever reason she, Violet, cannot get to her dragon in time, she won't be able to outrun the enemy either. And the scene ends with the resolution, which is when Imogen tells her she'll run with her until she's fast enough. Then the chapter has a scene break. For the next scene, I'll move quicker through the story pillars now that you know what you're looking at. And what's interesting in this one is that you'll see how one scene can move from one room to another. Here, the inciting incident is another inciting encounter. So just like before, there is a bit of setup first to anchor the scene in the reader's mind. The first few paragraphs clarify where we are, who's there, what's in the room, and the entrance of Professor De Vera. Again, don't come at me in the comments for butchering their names. People spell my name with an E, it's infuriating, and yet I never say anything. Now, the professor entering a classroom is not an inciting incident, and that's because it's nothing unusual. It's what you'd expect from any classroom, nothing that would set the scene in motion in a way that would grip the readers. No, the inciting incident is when Colonel Markham walks in. That instantly piques the reader's curiosity because Violet thinks he's a traitor. From there, the progressive complication starts rolling in. First, the colonel announces that there have been 2 attacks on the borders. One at 8,000 feet of altitude, which is a lot higher than what the supposed enemy, the Gryphon Riders, are comfortable flying, so why attack where they would be at a disadvantage? Then the second attack at one of the outposts, which are rarely attacked, at least not directly, which makes the attack pretty unusual. Then for the last progressive complication of the scene, we follow Violet out of the classroom where her friend from earlier, Rhiannon, tells her that she thinks the school is hiding something from them. It raises the stakes for Violet because if her friend knows the truth, Rhiannon's life could be in danger. But the scene turns when Rhiannon explains that she's suspicious because she saw something. People going to a little door in the back of the infirmary, which is now guarded. This turning point throws Violet into a moment of crisis and contemplation. On one hand, she's relieved because her friend doesn't know what the school is really hiding, so Rhiannon's is safe, but she's now confused because why would this door be guarded to begin with? And so for the climax of the scene, Violet skips lunch with her friend, which fuels her internal conflict even more, and goes to the library to look for answers. She's a book nerd, I think I forgot to mention this, and so she spends a lot of time skimming history books. And the scene resolves an hour later when Violet gives up and leaves empty-handed. Then comes the third scene, which closes this chapter, so pay close attention here. This time, the inciting incident is an inciting event. The assessment day. The day first-year students are paired and called to step on the mat to be evaluated on their combat skills. As the first match begins, the first complication occurs when her friend, Rhiannon, finally confronts her about avoiding her. Fairly low stakes. Then comes the second and final progressive complication. The next first-year student gets called on the mat, and as she steps in, she points at Violet and says that she wants to fight her instead. For context, Violet is a second year, so she isn't being tested today. She's only watching. And this girl on the mat, she's the little sister of the friend who died saving Violet's life. So she blames Violet for it. Obviously, fighting second year students isn't allowed, but she insists. And as the progressive complication unfolds, Violet's last name is being said out loud, which then triggers the turning point. A first year, roughly the size of a door, pushes through the crowd and asks where Sorringale is. Her friend Nadine, who is having a perfectly nice day, makes a joke about it. She stands up, points at her own purple hair, and claims to be Violet. The guy then grabs hold of her head and twists, snapping her neck. End of the chapter. Now tell me you're stopping there and going to bed. Hell no. That's the first way to make a chapter break, ending on the turning point of a scene. But you can't end every chapter this way. A novel made entirely of cliffhangers can be pretty exhausting. A reader who is never once allowed to breathe stops trusting you. You need to give them an opportunity to stop that feels natural, yet give them just enough to pique their curiosity to want to dive back in the next day, which is exactly what the author does next. Now, before we get into it, working out where your chapters need to break is a completely different job from watching somebody else do it. It's one of the things that I get asked about most and on which I give writers feedback and guidance inside the Story Pillars program, scene by scene as they draft, so they stop second guessing and keep moving. If you're interested, it'll be the first link in the description. Now, chapter 10 is where this gets interesting because that chapter does two completely different things. It opens by finishing what chapter 9 left hanging, and then it ends in a way that's the exact opposite of everything we've just looked at. That second way of ending chapters is the technique most writers get wrong. And that's because what needs to be done is a little bit counterintuitive. So let's take chapter 10 in order. First, how do you start a new chapter from the turning point of the previous one? Well, look at what Yarros does. Straight into the moment of crisis and contemplation. Same scene, but on to the next pillar. And that's your answer if you're writing a single POV. You pick things up exactly where you left off at the moment of crisis and contemplation, and you complete the scene from there all the way to the resolution. If your story runs on multiple POV and you want to switch POV on the next chapter, you don't have to pick up that chapter at the moment of crisis and contemplation. But whenever you do come back to that character, that's where you'll start. So you'll need to do a little bit of tracking and make sure that you have your scenes planned for each POV, because that will make your life a hell lot easier. The link to the scene planner is in the description down below. Then Violet snaps out of it and attacks the guy. That fight is the climax of the scene and ends with Violet killing him. During the resolution of that scene, people are worried about her because she's hurt and wants her to skip the session. But Violet refuses and goes through the rest of the assessment day. Here you'll notice no scene break, but a clear scene transition. By the way, let me know in the comments if you'd like me to make a deep dive video on scene transition specifically. Now, for the final scene of this chapter, this is where we see the second way to end your chapters in action. Mechanically, it's the opposite of chapter 9. The last scene in the chapter runs through all 6 pillars, and the chapter ends on a resolution. Nothing hanging, no body on the floor, no reason at all your readers couldn't close the book, put it on a nightstand, and turn the light off. Which sounds like it should kill the momentum, and yet the reader flips the page instead, because that resolution piqued their curiosity. Let me show you how. In the final scene of chapter 10, we're back in Violet's room, and what do we have there? I mean, who do we have in her room? The inciting encounter of the scene. Xaden. He's the boyfriend, is stationed somewhere else, and because of that, they rarely see each other. Through their conversation, there are a few progressive complications that arise, and ultimately, the turning point arrives when a knock sounds at the door. Someone came to pick him up, and he has to leave. now. This throws Violet into a moment of crisis and contemplation where she begs him to stay because they never see each other. Him walking out that door is the climax of the scene, but on his way, he presses a piece of paper into her hand, and the resolution is her alone in her room unfolding it. So you see here the difference is that we don't end on a crazy high-stake turning point. We have a clean, slow down resolution that is satisfying enough to be a natural stop for your readers and plants a seed in their mind to either think one more chapter or come back to it the next day, which shows you that you can end a chapter on a complete scene and still make it impossible to put down, as long as your resolution opens a question instead of closing one. And then, as you can see, chapter 11 starts fresh. New scene, new setup. She went out on a smile at the end of chapter 10. She comes back in on a smile here, and the reader's brain stitches the gap shut without asking any questions. So to quickly recap the two ways to write your chapter endings, one of the two is panic, which you can only do so often before your reader burns out. And the other one is curiosity, which you can do all day long and they'll thank you for it. But instead of being two vague concepts, panic and curiosity, now you have a proper system to write your chapter endings. These are the two patterns I kept seeing in best-selling novels, and chapter transitions are one of the many aspects of the craft I help writers master inside the Story Pillars program. If you've spotted a different pattern in something you've read, or you've got a way of doing this that works in your story, then by all means, please let me know in the comments, and I might even do a follow-up video on these. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn how to use internal conflict to make those chapters of yours even more addictive, then watch this video next. I'll walk you through how to craft better and juicier internal conflict than the usual vague advice of fears versus desires.